And my hot take today is some project managers are actually product managers and they don't even know it. They have no clue that they've been living in this project management mindset, but they're actually sometimes doing product management work.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point, and find out what's on their mind. Now, I'm taking a bit of a break from new hot takes at the moment, but you can still head over to onenightinproduct.com to find all of my old hot takes, as well as longer interviews with thought leaders and practitioners, and links to the podcast on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, where you can like, share, subscribe, leave a comment or review, and let me know what you think. All right, so in front of me, I can see kind of a grey background, fairly nondescript with a door and a light switch. I know there's a fairly scruffy-looking bookcase just out of shot, but I don't want to shame people. But the person in front of me, in front of all of this background, I'm going to throw straight over to you, ask you to tell us your name, where you're based, what it is you do, and most importantly, what's your hot take?
Hey, everybody. My name is Kanika Tolver. I am from the Washington, D.C. area, and I have spent over 20 years in the GovTech industry. I've worked as a project manager and product manager. So I've been on both sides of today's hot take. And my hot take today is I won't even say most, some project managers are actually product managers and they don't even know it. They have no clue that they've been living in this project management mindset, but they're actually sometimes doing product management work.
Right, so what normally happens when people start talking about product and project managers is they tell it in the reverse, because there's this kind of image of, the empowered, inspired sort of product management vision, the sort of the Marty Kagan vision of product management and all the things that product people should be doing. And then they'll sit there and say, well, actually in these companies, or many companies, that the people that are supposed to be product managers are actually project managers. They're just moving tasks around and stuff like that. Now, that obviously does happen in many companies, but again, you've got it the other way around. So you're saying that project managers are product managers. So the question is it that almost like the product managers that are project managers and the project managers that are product managers are kind of meeting somewhere in the middle and doing some of both? Like, what is it, a spectrum? Like, how do you see that?
I've been a project manager majority of my career, and I kind of started my career during that era of like the waterfall methodology.
Yep.
When project management was really popular. And now as we evolved into this space where we're building products using the Scrum framework and the Agile methodology, I'm seeing a shift where people are still carrying the project management job title, but they're doing the product management responsibilities, like managing the product backlog, prioritizing product features, doing a lot of stakeholder engagement. There was a time where we were just focusing on schedule, resources, timelines, and budgets and tasks. But I want to encourage project managers who are doing some of the product management work to reframe their mindset and also rebrand themselves within this industry to look at themselves as future product leaders, because they're doing some of that work. They just have been called project managers for so long that they haven't really even seen the industry shift. So that's my hot take, is even for myself. Within the last 6 years, I've kind of evolved into doing product management work, but on paper, my manager and my organization was still looking at me as a project manager.
So the question there is then, before we kind of dig into some of those themes, is like, in your opinion, because like you talked about some of the things, managing backlogs and, writing up tickets and stuff, some of the kind of day-to-day meat and drink of an individual contributor product manager. But what are you defining then, aside from that, as like some of the key responsibilities of a product manager that a project manager in one of these organizations is actually involved in? And I guess by extension, are there areas that these project managers aren't doing that they should be doing and maybe haven't had the opportunity to do so yet?
I think some of the areas that I've seen myself evolve in that I wasn't doing is I've been tasked with developing product roadmaps, developing product strategy, because I was primarily working with ServiceNow products and building ServiceNow
Yeesh.
building low code products and applications for enterprise solutions and organizations, like using IT service management solutions, building virtual agent chatbots and things like that. And I've been tasked to do product roadmaps and to develop product strategies. And that was new to me, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm always so used to working on developing the project schedule. But when I started to be tasked with, okay, I want to see a actual product roadmap for a release, for incremental releases and incremental improvements to existing products that I was working on building, I was like, I'm doing product work now. And I think that we, as project managers, have not been trained in that area, in those areas.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's the interesting point as well, is like the training part, like how you build the capabilities, the competencies that maybe you didn't have in your old life, as it were. But I guess there's an interesting question. You say you've worked in, GovTech or government organizations, and I'm going to go out, you talked about waterfall. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I imagine that certainly in the past, these companies were much more kind of project oriented. They were much more kind of funding individual initiatives and kind of defining everything up front, being very kind of old school projecty. But that over the years, and God knows what's going on with the government these days, but over the years, they've been much more moving towards trying to be more digital first and some of that, and that maybe there's just been this natural shift of that project management responsibility to kind of embrace the new world. But do you think that that's been a conscious shift on anyone's part, or has it just kind of organically happened as the overall kind of industry trends have been changing?
I think when you focus in on, usability and improving customer experiences for the public sector, I think that that's where the shift has come, because there was, like, in past administrations, there was, digital strategies that were put into place. There were things where we were focusing on, some people call it UX, we call it, customer experience, CX. I think when we start really focusing on usability, testing, surveying the public, because you got to realize in GovTech, a lot of things that we have been doing, there were websites and different products that we were putting out there for the public to consume. And I don't think that gathering that data has always been so important. And I think maybe in the last 8 years, we've seen a push for, you know, making decisions off of data that we receive from the public. And that's where I started to see myself saying, let's make decisions off of data, user research, right? Because when we have all of these public facing websites and products that we have for United States citizens to consume, that's when I thought, like, hey, I'm moving to more like product work, you know? And I think that's what I've seen in the last two administrations, is that shift has taken place with collecting good, valuable data.
Kind of don't want to sidetrack it, but there kind of feels like an interesting aspect of, as you say, with, say, for example, product strategy, like longer term planning, looking to the future, having a vision. And this isn't just a US thing either. This is something that when I've spoken to people in the UK about, like, who've worked in the UK government and on sort of public sector products and stuff like that. Always feels really hard to do that strategic thinking and have that long-term plan when administrations can come and go kind of in most countries, at least every few years, right? And
Yes.
the new people can come in, and again, like we've all seen it in the US, whoever you agree with, like, it has changed. And certainly in the UK, there's been some shifts, maybe not quite so drastic when we got our new administration in last year as well. That, like, every few years, you're almost having to either defend or to some extent rebuild your strategy to kind of meet a new set of policy objectives. Is that something that does happen? It's something that you have to kind of take into account. And I guess, how do you manage to kind of keep a sense of consistency yourself with the stuff that you're working on?
That's a very, very valuable point that you made. And I think that's really sometimes it's difficult and frustrating when you are building products and every 4 years, different initiatives they change or people have their own different agendas. I think is very intentional about making sure that you're making continuous improvement and looking at what did you accomplish within that 4 years and looking at the data, looking at user information, but also making sure that you are building upon something that can have a continuous improvement. That's why the feedback loop is so important. That's why, the Scrum framework and implementing the Scrum principles and values is so important. So it's always to me, um, this may be another hot take, but
2 for 1.
sometimes product managers have a difficult time doing their job because they don't always have good, strong product leaders. And when you have this continuous change in leadership, you really have to make sure that you are working closely and collaborating with good product leaders, at the executive level, at the political appointee level, because they need to see what happened the last 4 years and they're coming in and you have to get them up to speed. So I think it's being very intentional about hiring good product leaders and executive leaders that look at it from a product led, position or product growth position. Because we don't do sales, we don't generate revenue and things like that in other organizations. But I do think some of the other product principles are still applicable. And I think sometimes we can have some product leaders don't see things from a product's lens, and that's where it gets very frustrating for product teams to keep having to do things over and over again every 4 years.
Yeah, I guess, maybe in really early startups when they keep pivoting, it's very similar kind of energy. But, there's probably no more kind of highest paid person's opinion than like the president or the prime minister or whatever of a country. So I guess, you've got to choose your flavor of insanity depending on which of those you prefer. But going back to the kind of the central point, like, as you say, sort of project managers in maybe what we might call kind of transforming environments, like in, for example, GovTech, where it's gone from one paradigm to another. You've got project managers doing product management work, as you say, or at least some of them. But there are some people out there that like, well, actually, job titles don't matter at all. Like, it doesn't matter what you call someone.
True.
It matters what you do, the impact you have, the outcomes that you create, all of that stuff. So, do you think that it matters that there should almost be like this great renaming, or do you think that it's all kind of fine? They're still going to be doing a bit of project management work as well, but then of course also many product managers are doing that too. Like, how much sort of kind of importance do you put on the name versus just doing?
I think the name implies that you're going to start to encourage product based principles, right? And I think that, you know, when you, I do think that job titles don't mean anything. I think building a product that is going to satisfy the customer needs is the most important thing and the most important mission that we should be signing up for when we are building a product for any population of users or people, because we need to be making our users and our stakeholders our best friends, right? And we need to be leaning into their challenges and into their pain points. But I think when it comes to from a perspective of managers and product leaders managing different teams, I think when product managers feel empowered to have that title and they get the proper training, they can start to enforce those best practices of product management into the project life cycle. Instead of calling it a project life cycle, now we can call it a product life cycle, right? We can start encouraging people to look at it from that perspective. I think it also, I know when I went from project manager to product manager on paper, it made me feel empowered to want to be more curious, to pay attention to data, to learn more, to gather more skill sets. I think project management, it gets a bad rap because it feels like you're just focusing on completing tasks. And are those tasks impactful? Are they impactful for a good quality product? Was it built? A lot of times in project management, we're checking the box. Did we just get it done? You know? And it's
Yep.
like, but product management is like, did we get it done the right way? Are our users happy? You know? Do we have user adoption and engagement? So I think for me, it empowered me to want to deliver things better.
Kind of feels like there's a certain element of almost visualization in there as well that you in what you say, like this idea that yeah, you could keep doing the old, the job under the old title and still make the same impact in some ways, but at the same time, it's almost like by naming what you are or what you want to be, then you're both persuading yourself that you should be doing things that maybe you weren't doing before, but also maybe implicitly trying to get either, I don't know what you'd call, like permission or buy-in or uptake from maybe your stakeholders so that they see that your position is different and that the name, whilst not intrinsically important, kind of does kind of change people's perception of what you are. Do you think there's anything to that?
I agree. I agree. And I think, changing the perception of users' approval or sign off or satisfaction of what you're delivering is so important. And I don't think you even have to say that we're doing it the product management way. You just can start, you know, incrementally increasing and maturing your organization based upon good best practices. Because at the end of the day, your customers and your users, they don't even really care what your job title is. The reality
Oh,
is that they
no.
really just want you to deliver something. They want you to gather requirements. They want you to, you know, build things every 2 weeks and show continuous improvements, right? And as long as they're seeing that, they're happy. A lot of times they're not even paying attention to your title. But I think talking to my leadership and talking to my manager at the time was it was such refreshing to have even a leader who was saying, "No, you're not a project manager. You're a product manager. You're building products and services for various different user communities, and let's change that title, but let's also change how we do the work."
So on that change aspect then, so like imagine that you've got some project manager in some, again, transforming organization or industry, someone that's maybe come from, again, one paradigm and they're moving to another, maybe doing some of the things already, but not 100% sure if they're doing them properly. Maybe they don't have a strong product culture within the organization because of the history and the way that things used to be done. And obviously you've kind of been through this journey yourself. So like, what are your top tips for someone who's wanting to make that kind of directional move? Like some of the things that they should think of or consider, or maybe sort of get trained in or read up on to try and make sure that they make an impact versus just being a project manager with this with like a different title.
Oh, I love this question. Thanks for asking it because I think I think
I get one good question in every now and then.
no, all of your questions have been great, Jason. I think that training up you yourself individually will be the biggest investment you can make, not only for the organization that you work for, but also for your own career, right? Because at the end of the day, like we'll I believe we're building ourselves as personal brands in this product space. Because one day you could be at this organization and one day you may want to work somewhere else and build another different product in a whole nother industry. Even like myself, I've been in GovTech, but that doesn't mean I need to stay in GovTech forever, right? So the
Yep.
first thing that I started to do, this is what I did, is I started to really invest in not leaning into my organization having to force me to go to training. I started training on my own. I started to do things that we wasn't even putting into the organization. So I did make sure that I had a true solid understanding of the agile methodology and scrum framework even as a project manager. The second thing is that I absorbed a lot of product related books and podcast shows. Yours is one of them. I found yours. I also made sure that I read things like Cracking the PM interview book. I read different other PM related books. I'm reading a new book right now. I think her name is uh is it Dr. Nika? She has a book called Agile Product Management that she just released. I just absorb reading a lot of books and blogs. I love the product school content. I'm a big fan of the product school. They have micro certifications, so I start knocking out their micro certifications. So the product school has product strategy, product discovery. They have, growth led. They have like all of these different micro certifications. I started absorbing all of the free training that I possibly could to really take what I was learning from those courses and putting it back into the organization that I was working at. And the next thing I did is I really started to connect with other strong product leaders on LinkedIn. I started looking at their content that they were posting, their LinkedIn profile. I started to revamp my resume to sound more product management ish. To rebrand myself, I started to shift my way of thinking from project to product.
Nice. Well, hopefully that journey will continue onwards and upwards, and maybe even a few people will come and find you after this and bolster your burgeoning network of product people as well. But if they want to come and find you after this and do that, come and chat, or maybe some project type people out there are looking to maybe make the move, where can they come and find you?
Everyone can find me on LinkedIn at kanikatolver.com. I'm sorry, that's in my website. So no,
Yeah.
you can find me at my website at kanikatolver.com. You can also find me directly on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. All
Oh,
social
wow.
media platforms, you can find me at Kanika Tolver. That's my handle on all major social media platforms. I am on LinkedIn and X majority of the times. But hey, I really enjoy, this conversation, and I just hope that more people will feel empowered to take control of their career during these challenging times and to shift themselves from being a project manager to being a product manager.
No, absolutely. Now, if you're talking about kind of taking control of your career, if I remember rightly, you've got a book called Career Rehab. Is that right?
Thanks for the plug. So I have this book called Career Rehab that I published in 2020. And it's called, Rebuild Your Personal Brand and Change or Rethink the Way That You Work. And this book is really to kind of bring it home to what we're talking about today. This book is really about identifying what's working well within your career and what's not working well within your career and gutting it out and rehabbing it to the point that you can brand market and sell yourself to any organization. I really talk about being a brand versus being an employee and shifting your mindset and understanding that you can be a strong personal brand. And if you're someone that's struggling right now within this difficult job market, career rehab will definitely empower you to look at yourself like a product, and you will definitely be able bringing it back home, Jason.
Bring it back home. I like it. I like it.
You're definitely going to be able to develop skills to be able to ship yourself into something that's very much so a rewarding career. And that's what career rehab is all about, is looking at yourself like a product and making sure that you can brand market and sell yourself into new opportunities.
Well, there you go. You can't say fair on that. What a way to end up as well. Well, I'll link all of that into the show notes, but all I can do for now is thank you ever so much for your hot take.
Thank you.